Hello and welcome to Shaman Sisters. That was you that time. All right.
Okay, just keep
Hello.
going.
Welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode 104. Obviously, we're starting off with a great time here. I am Michelle Hawk, and I'm here with my shaman sister, Katherine Bird. And today we are talking about life of shamanic service. So we do have, at this point, we have over 100 episodes of amazing content. That's probably about 100 hours of stories and practices and tools and perspective and other amazing stuff. So please subscribe, like our videos, comment on our videos, and help us, if you feel called to share with anyone who needs to hear what we're talking about or needs to hear these conversations, then please do share. You can find us on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. And if you feel inclined to support us on Patreon, then you can do so at patreon.com/Shaman Sister Sessions. That's patreon.com/Shaman Sister Sessions. And that will help us mitigate the costs of producing and uploading and all the maintenance fees that go with producing a podcast so that it can continue to be free for you. So thank you so much for joining us here today. Again, this is a fun topic that we're delving into that Kat and I have been feeling a lot of stuff coming up around lately. So we wanted to share this with you. Life of shamanic service. Kat, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Michelle. It's a beautiful, beautiful day here in New Mexico. And yeah, I'm just coming off a really nice weekend, and overall things are great. Just started my Heroes program this last week, my membership program, and that's been so much fun and really enjoying making, you know me, I'm always like really loving making new offerings and creating new things. So that really lights me up.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of your life of shamanic service, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Wonderful. Yeah, and over here, I was looking out the window before we started recording, and through Kat's screen, I was like, it looks so sunny there. And here in Portland, I'm all wrapped in my sweater and my cozy fleece pants and everything. So, all right, well, whatever. But this topic of life of shamanic service, this is something that we've touched upon in a few other episodes. And if you go back, you can look at, signs that you're a shaman. We've talked about like living a shamanic life, but really this aspect of service has been coming up big time lately, especially in the context of where we're at globally. And so there's a lot of different perspectives out there. There's a lot of different philosophies that are informing this, what we're here to talk about today. And I invite you to keep this in mind. We're talking about not only from the perspective of people who are entrepreneurs or people who are self-employed or working professionally as shamanic practitioners or as healers or as light workers, but people who are not doing that professionally as well. But there's a lot of different pieces here, and I'm really excited to jump in and unravel.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about what we're, what are we defining this as a little bit, just so that people know, because you said, well, it could be this, but it could also be this, and all of these pieces around service and what that means, and how we are being often very much guided towards service, or wanting to be of service, or trying to figure that out in some sort of way, or being of service and then trying to figure out how that fits into our lives. Or is it our business? Is it not our business? Are we making money from it? Are we, and if we are, how does that fit and how does that work? And that comes with all kinds of other issues and stuff that come up. And where do we draw lines also, I think sometimes is a big piece around our boundaries around our service and our calling, and how do we know what it looks like and who we are. So often I see people who have an awakening and get involved in shamanic work or spiritual work, meditation, medicine work, all of these things. And things shift and move around so quickly. And all of a sudden, what life meant, what the meaning of life before is no longer actually valid. And there's new values that are emerging and new intentions towards creation that are coming up of how, people want to see the world change. And there's a lot of confrontation over what does my service look like? And is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And, oh, I've had these amazing experiences. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? Is this my work now? Or I have this thing that's emerging and I'm good at this. Am I supposed to be offering this in the world? So all of these things are sort of layers of this. And then also like our personal service, right? Like day to day on the ground, whether you're doing this as a business or not, how are we of service in life service? Yeah. Is that, what else, Michelle? Anything else you can think of on top of all of these things that seem to come up when we're confronting ourselves around service?
Yeah, I love how you kind of broke that down a little bit, right? And it's like, there's a lot of questions that we ask, and one of the ones that you highlighted, I think, is a really important one, especially in, Kat and I are both entrepreneurs. We're self-employed. We've both been in business for over 10 years each at this point. And so we hang out with other entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of language and there's a lot of philosophy out there about like monetize your passion and follow your bliss and you'll get paid for it, whatever, blah, blah. And sometimes that applies in the case of doing this spirit level, deep soul calling type work. Sometimes it doesn't. And so there's this really, I feel like there's this important, again, from our perspective today, we're looking at life of shamanic service, including all these different pieces. I would also add, and this is kind of a side note, I'm also just sort of registering this as another personal ding from spirit that we're even talking about this today. I beta tested a program last year, actually about exactly a year ago, on alchemy of service, where I invited in a small group of people to help me kind of play with some offerings and some teachings around applying principles of alchemy and shamanism to your service. And it was great, people really loved it, but I kind of felt like, okay, I need to let it sit. But now I'm getting tapped on again of like, hey, revisit this thing and give it a different flavor. And so one of the pieces that I want to bring into this that we were looking at in the alchemy of service, and if you're interested in this, it is eventually going to be available. Just make sure that you're on my list. If you're not already on my list, you can go get on there at joyofenergy.com. And so then when I do make Alchemy of Service officially available to the public, then you will have access to it. But one of the things that we looked at, and we will be looking at in Alchemy of Service, is these different layers of service, right? Like the physical layer of service, the energetic, mental, emotional layer of service through the context of self-growth, and the spirit level of service. And these can align, and they can also be really different, right? So looking at, well, how does our service express through the 3D realm, through our bodies, through our families, through our work, through our volunteer work, through activism? How does it express through the context of personal actualization and development, and that service expressing essentially for the self, and then service on behalf of the collective, service on behalf of the universe and of Earth, right? And so I think this is one of these pieces as well where, and Kat, I love what you said about values. I think that's a really important piece of, as your values change going through your spiritual awakening or your shamanic actualization, how do those values get reflected in all of these areas? And there's often an emphasis on, I would say, usually this physical manifestation, like the job, the volunteer, the family, the physical level of your service to others. And are those values also reflected in these other areas in a holistic experience of service?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that one of the things that I did for my new membership was that I wrote up a big long ethos of, what did I want to stand for, as a collective that we could believe in, so that what I was creating was coming from a source of values. And I think that that's really important when we're looking at whether you're doing something for money or not, or whatever, that you're finding more and more ways to align. And so often we have these awakenings and we have these experiences, and they help us to sort through what's important to us and help us to sort through the old beliefs that we've been having, and the, letting go of things that have been holding us back, and then inspiring us towards something that is an alignment. And just to kind of place some awareness around the fact that often this can be a very uncomfortable experience as we're in this, where we're realizing that things in the past haven't been working, or that we haven't been the person that we could be. We've been holding on to things. We've been living in kind of a wounded space. We've been valuing things that aren't maybe feeling important anymore. And then as we're shifting and changing where we're headed, a lot of times because of the society that we live in, we want to immediately start working on a new business plan, or creating some kind of program, or immediately looking at how this translates into our business in some kind of way, or what it is that we're doing with ourselves. And yet it's like we're half cooked, and we're like not really able to fully live in either place yet. And that is often where I see people really struggling and having a lot of internal conflict, because it feels like it should have sorted itself out by now, even though in context is probably, your awakening's just begun not that long ago. And I just want to presence into that discomfort, the uncomfortable period of time where there's this uncertainty, and it's like the alignment hasn't fully clicked into place yet. And there's an unknowing of exactly how it's going to look. And that can feel really confronting. And like I said, uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable because we want certainty. We want to have a plan. We want to know what the future looks like. And as we're going through this process, there's often stretches of periods of time where we don't. And we're resting in that moment of waiting for things to fully come into alignment for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that might not have been in your life before. Maybe in your life, you went to school, you figured it out, you got a job, you realized this is the next thing, this is the next thing, this is the next thing. And then all of a sudden you're having these mystical, spiritual experiences and shifting yourself. And it's hard to fit those things into the context of what was before. There's something new coming, yet that expanse in the middle can feel like it drags on. Sometimes it feels like it's dragging on forever. Like, why can't I just figure this out? Why don't I know what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, sitting in the discomfort of it. And I think we've referenced this in other episodes too, like probably particularly the integration episode, right? Of like, just because you took a training last weekend doesn't mean that you're immediately qualified to turn around and offer right away, right? Like that might eventually be a part of your service, but let it land first, right? So we have other things in our repertoire about that. I would also say that part of this life of shamanic service is about moving beyond the paradigm of one-to-one exchange, and about this, so looking at kind of a traditional career model, Kat, as you were sort of referencing, right, where we grow up being informed by the idea of you go to work and you perform a task and you get paid for the task, right? So it's this very like linear exchange process. And shamanic service in particular is not linear, it's cyclical, because everything in shamanic practice and an energy work is a cyclical process. So we might be performing services for which we're not directly compensated, but that we are ultimately asked to do, but then we are receiving from other sources in other ways. And so I look at this, I call it, when people ask me about this, or when people, I'm offering work, or I feel called to offer scholarship work to people, or offer sessions to friends who need help, or whatever the case may be, and they're saying something to the effect of like, oh, what can I do for you? Or how can I pay you back? And if there's a genuine ask, then I will ask, but otherwise I'll say, offer to somebody else. Like if there's someone else in your life who needs help, pay it forward. Like I'm good. I have everything I need. I am resourced from all these other ways. I've received a lot of support from mentors and guides and teachers over the years. I have had a lot of people show up for me in big ways. So I know that I have everything I need and I'm good. And this is me paying all of that support forward. This is me continuing that flow, that cyclical relationship of service, not expecting anything in direct return, but knowing that I'm part of this greater cycle of service. And that's something that I've really softened into over the years. I think when I first began my trajectory, when did I start my business? 2009. So 11 years ago, when I first started my business, I think I had a little bit more of this conditioning around, oh, I can't do this service for someone unless they're paying me, because then it also came with, oh, then that means I don't value myself, or that means that whatever other ideas or stuff, we're taught of, like, you have to charge, otherwise you don't value yourself, or you have to, charge a high price point, otherwise you're, negating your life force, or people won't value you, or whatever the deal is, right? We hear a lot of this from business coaches. And I had that kind of at the beginning. I went through this whole thing of like, I need to charge a premium price for my work because I'm so valuable. And now, my value is not rooted in how much I'm charging for my services, because I know that the money is only one way in which I am participating in this cyclical flow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but so there's a couple of pieces there. There is, it's kind of like the evolution of your growth through this, because I think that it's important for us to go through the process of realizing, oh, I do have value. This is something that's worth something. This is having an exchange with someone so that they value their own healing, right? There's all of these pieces that are very important for us to work on and come to terms with, and all of this. And then there is a certain point in your experience when you are in the space of being able to offer mentorship, and you are being able to create opportunities for people when that feels in alignment. And so it's these different evolutionary points. And you might be at the place where really your work right now is, I have value and I deserve to be able to eat and pay my rent and be okay in the world and charge for my work. Or you might be at the place of, wow, this is my sacred work, and maybe I have another income stream, and my sacred work is over here in a different way, and I don't have to charge as much, or I charge what just feels good to me, or I do other things. There's so kind of look at yourself on your own trajectory of like, where is your edge, where is your inner work right now, and work that, because that's what's really important. And it's not going to necessarily be where Michelle is, or where I am at this exact moment, or where anyone else is. So that takes the inquiry. That's the self-inquiry you want to land into, of like, what am I actually working on right now?
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, that's really helpful, right? And everybody's at a different place in that journey, and there are these different growth edges, and it feels like the edge that I'm in right now is actually the majority of my shamanic service is not taking place within the context of my business right now in this moment. And so I'm curious to go there a little bit too, because Kat, I know you're producing Heroes, this new awesome membership program. And of course, I still have things happening in my business, but for those of you who follow me and, maybe subscribe to my newsletters and follow me on social media, you might have noticed that I haven't actually really put anything out in weeks. And that's because so much of my energy and attention and where spirit is asking me to serve is taking place in all the behind the scenes life stuff in a really significant way. And so the business is just it's one little slice of the pie of the holistic piece of my shamanic service, and much of my work is happening elsewhere right now.
Michelle, when you're saying this, I'm thinking about what they call the magic square, which maybe you've seen, in maybe you've seen it in like a feng shui context, where it's a box and it has all these, it has the different squares, and in the different squares, there's the different aspects of who you are. And there is an intention towards bringing life force and energy into every one of those squares so that you can be a fully fleshed out human being, not just living in one realm. And especially when we're working in the shamanic realms, when we're working in spiritual and energetic realms, the balance will come in some way. Mm-hmm. Some kind of way, something's going to come in and balance you. So when we intentionally do that, then we have some say in it. We have a little bit of control over it, and sort of. But we get to be an active participant in looking at those places. And I think what you're saying is really important, because I see a lot of people really struggle with this, because they have a sacred work that maybe is like, I know people who their real true work is doing things like earthworks and grid working and working with animals, distance working with issues that are happening, natural disaster issues, things that you cannot really often figure out a way to quantify or to put a price tag on, because it's coming from spirit, from source, is tapping you on the shoulder and saying, okay, you need to go and sit and do your practices and work energetically and do this work right now. And it's not because somebody's calling on the phone and saying, I need you to help me. It's because it's coming from spirit, it's coming from source. And I see people really struggle with this because they're not being seen out in the world, right? There's not like a big sign over their head saying, I'm doing this amazing sacred work. It's sort of like undercover, nobody knows about it maybe. So they're not getting social recognition. Their neighbors don't know about it. There's no way to quantify it in the way that we have been trained to quantify work.
And there might not even be a name for it, right? Like people might not even know that it exists. And yet, looking at functionally what's happening, I love that example, right? Like the earth gridders, or especially people, I feel like, looking at these different levels of service, right? Like the 3D level of helping people and volunteer in your business, right? And then the service to self-growth and service to spirit, this stuff, and like healing lineages and healing collective karma and healing like all of the intangible stuff, or you're healing ancestors, right? Like you're not going to get paid for that in the one-to-one sense, but you are getting paid, right, in this cyclical flow of service that we are participating in when we choose to be part of this shamanic path, right? And so really recognizing like, and I just had a very brief conversation with somebody that I met a while ago. And, he was asking me what I did. And so I said, you know, I'm a shamanic alchemist. And he's like, oh, who do you work for? I said, I work for Earth, you know, just sort of joking, right? I was like, employed by Earth. And, you know, he asked like, oh, does Earth pay well? Does Earth have a 401k and benefits? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, not in the way that you think. Like, I can tell you're a very used to corporate white dude bro situation happening over here. So we do not speak the same language, but yeah, not in the way that you think.
Right. Right. And sometimes your service is raising your kids, you know, or planting trees, or it can feel very mundane as well. I know Michelle has a new dog, and the dog has been her major service recently, and really, really working with this dog. And nobody's going to, you know, applaud Michelle for like, oh, you got a dog, great, good for
Or
you.
yeah,
Right?
and she hasn't been officially announced yet, so don't worry if you haven't seen any pictures. I haven't even like shared her presence any. So Kat sort of outed me.
Sorry, Michelle has a dog. I told everybody.
That's okay. No, she's great. She'll make her official appearance whenever she's ready. But you know, that's part of this service, right? Is like having this little being who doesn't know how to regulate her nervous system, who has a lot of fear and anxiety, who's crazy hypersensitive and very emotionally aware of everything that's going on around her. All of a sudden, my shamanic service, and I was telling Kat, I was like, oh man, this little dog is the microcosm, the perfect microcosm for what's happening on the planet right now, in terms of being able to be that sensitive to this stress threshold and be sensitive to inputs of information and energy. And, you know, every time we go outside, it's a new adventure of, okay, how can I teach her resilience? How can I teach her self-trust? How can I teach her, you know, the ability to discern what is a threat and what is not a threat? How can I teach her how to go through this shamanic experience of self-actualization and empowerment so that she can stay in her body instead of dissociating in a fear state, right? And like this is what I do for people. This is what I do in life. This is what I'm doing on behalf of the planet. That, you know, a lot of this happens within my job description of teach empowerment and embodiment and actualization and transformation. And here I have this beautiful little pup showing up who is sweet as can be, and yet has this crazy hypersensitive way of being in the world that feels really unsafe to her. So she is a big portion of my service right now. I also have a big portion of my shamanic service going toward some family dynamic stuff with my family dog, my dog who I've had for years and years, who is going through some major health challenges. And then of course, all of the stuff that's bringing up with my parents and bringing up in her, you know, is she ready to transition? Is she not ready to transition? What sort of catharsis and lineage healing is happening here? So it's all through the dogs right now. All of my attention is on the dogs, and just having a lot of gratitude and appreciation for the teachings that I've received from Gracie, that's the family dog, over the years, and getting to be in service to her while she is being in service to my parents in a big way.
So I think one of the things that's important there, Michelle, is that when we're living this life, that it is really important that we give ourselves permission to focus on what is most being called up. Because I think that we have a tendency to want things to be a certain way and want life to be in that linear fashion. It's just not going to. And that there will be times when you're like, oh my gosh, I really want to be of service, and I really want to get my work out there, and I really want to do this thing. And yet it's really your kid who is going through a major transition, or they're transmuting something for your entire lineage, and you need to hold space for that. Or it's your community who is going through a grieving process, and you need to hold space for that. And or your dog or your cat or your partner or your parent is transitioning, and you are being called to that service. And that might not be the most convenient thing, but nobody said that this was going to be a convenient path. It's sort of like, if you thought that was what was going to happen when you got into this stuff, then I guess somebody should have told you before now that being uncomfortable and being inconvenienced is sort of part of the deal. So
sorry to disabuse you of that illusion.
Right. And I think honestly, we have to say that because there's so much spiritual whitewashy BS out there that somehow you're going to raise your vibe and be spiritual and like never have any problems and manifest your abundance in every moment exactly as you want it. And that's not actually how life works, because life is here to grow you and to live through you and to teach and develop you. And if everything was smooth sailing and no big deal and butterflies and unicorns all the time, you wouldn't learn new things. You wouldn't develop and grow and stretch and become more of the resilient, amazing, capable person that you are.
Boom, mic drop. So, and that's part of the shamanic path too, right? Like we know that that shamanism emphasizes not only the light but the shadow, and not only the expansion but also the contraction, not only the birth and the newness, but also death and grieving and moving into the underworld and having these dark experiences, these dark night of the soul experiences. And that's part of shamanic service too. So in this current spot that I'm in around this, I had, like 30 seconds probably of thinking like, oh, I feel bad about not writing new stuff, or I feel like I should be producing whatever, social media content or whatever. And then I was like, wait a second, but all the energy is here. All the energy is in presence. All the energy is in, being with my family and being with my dog, and, spending hours a day walking my dog and helping her regulate her nervous system and helping me regulate my nervous system. And that's where it's truly alive. And so the invitation that I have for you in that is really look at where is your life force flowing, and how can you just trust that that is what is being asked of you right now. That is the most lit up expression of your service right now in this moment, where spirit is asking you to spend time and energy and attention and allow that to happen. Sometimes our service looks like resting. Sometimes our service looks like stepping out of action, right? In order to allow energy to settle, in order to allow this is another one of those things that I want to mention that Kat was bringing in around, like sometimes our service, there's no name for it, or people don't know what it looks like. Sometimes our service is simply being a channel, being an acupuncture needle for earth, to allow energy to flow through our bodies to translate into the earth plane. And that can be really exhausting. It can be very tiring. Nobody knows that's happening. Nobody knows what that looks like. There's not a language for it. There's not a conscious understanding of it. Sometimes I'm even in this place of like, I'm so tired and I can't tell why. And I have so much energy moving through me and I'm exhausted. I can't do anything. But that your service in that moment might simply be to receive energy, to translate it into an embodied experience, and to rest and allow that to happen. And that can be service too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to be integrating what it is that you're working on or learning, the skills that you're developing, the things that are awakening within you. Mm-hmm. And I see this often in my clients because I work primarily with people who are on this path and are practitioners or transitioning into really claiming practitionership. And it can feel like, well, I should. There's a lot of should. A lot of, well, I should already have this figured out. I should already have my book written. I should already have my program set. I should already have this and that and so on. And sometimes it takes just so much trust to accept that you're on the right timing. You're on the right, you're right where you need to be right this minute. and to trust the unfolding that you're going through, and that things, like you said, are in this very cyclical nature, and that there will be times when you need to stop, and there will be times when you're called to create and to understand that that's part of the deal. So, when you're called to do one thing, do it. And, I spend a lot of time in study and training and practice and these development, and that's really important to me because I'm really passionate about that. And that also takes something, it takes time to integrate the things that we're learning. It takes time to fully embody and to go through the energy cycles as our system is processing things out and bringing new things in. It takes time for the structure of our being energetically to go through the processes that it's going through as we're basically going through these evolutionary cycles throughout our life.
Yeah, I love what you said about, allowing these things to land. And I want to kind of piggyback something on top of that, that part of shamanic service is also receiving. And so we've been talking a lot about service from sort of an output of energy, whether it's from, doing your sacred work in the world, or caring for your family, or supporting others in their process, or doing, like allowing energy to flow as this outward expression of service. But shamanic service is also being a recipient and a witness for other people to be in their sacred work and their service too. And so sometimes, I know that I've received sessions where, yes, I received a lot in the session, but it also felt like, oh, part of that gift is me giving back to this person who's offering by allowing them to offer their sacred work and holding them in witness and honoring and respect as they are claiming this aspect of themselves and as they are expressing their sacred service in the world. So, please, as we're looking at shamanic service, again, it's like, if you need to be in receiving, be in receiving. That's service too. If you need to, I don't know if people are really getting massages right now with distance regulations, right? But like, go get a massage, or go, ask your partner for a massage, or ask to, for what you need, and allow yourself to be part of that flow of service, not only from allowing energy to flow through you out for the benefit of others, but allowing others' energy to flow through you. And again, it's this cyclical relationship with service, where if we're not allowing ourselves to receive, then we're not fully being a part of that cycle.
Right. And to receive from spirit, and to receive from our guides, and to receive from source energy, to allow ourselves to connect to the earth, to connect to the heavens, to move energy through our bodies. So often I see people who have certain gifts or things that they're interested in, and then they start translating into service, and they can't actually handle the currents of energy that are moving through them in context of their service. So in session work, the things that are moving through them, it overwhelms their system, or the emotional issues that are coming up in sessions. And this could be like, you might not consider yourself a shaman. You might be like a therapist. You might be something that you're like, well, this isn't really actually even energy work, you might say. But then it becomes really debilitating and energetically draining and exhausting, because there's not enough receiving, self-care, moving energy, doing practices, taking time for yourself, being alone, working with energy, working with nature. If you're not resourcing yourself, then your service can't evolve. And as much as you try to push it up the hill, being like, oh, I need to get more clients, you're not going to be able to get clients that are, that are going to destroy you. I mean, you might be able to do that for a little while, but
did you say restore or destroy?
Destroy, like if you like it does, if you don't have the capacity to build your client base and build your business, you will only be able to sustain that for a certain period of time before you burn out, and then you won't be able to be of service. So building in your foundations of self-care practices, moving energy, honoring yourself, taking time alone, all of those things must take a giant priority if you want to be of service in any way, whether it's in a business or private or in any way that you're choosing to do this work.
Absolutely. Love that. And we have so many episodes that are related to that. So if you're wondering, well, how do I do that, Kat and Michelle, then please circle back to any of our other amazing episodes for tools and practices for that. So I'm wondering, Kat, do we have any other pieces that we'd love to add for people of like, how do we know? I guess also that's another piece. How do we know if we're aligning with our shamanic service, our life of shamanic service?
I think one of the things, like I said at the beginning, was that ethos, right? What are your ethics? What are your values? What do you want to see in the world? How do you want the world to look and feel? And how do you want yourself to feel? And what are you valuing? And then is everything that you're doing aligning with that? And if you can create that for yourself and consistently draw yourself back to that, then you're going to make choices that are in alignment with that. And then you can ask, okay, well, is it in alignment for me to do this? Great. Yeah, let's do that. And if it's not, then say no.
Awesome. Love that. And for any of you who haven't ever done a values elicitation, I believe there's probably some information on how to do that if you just do a search for values elicitation exercise, or even just like Kat did for Heroes, this awesome ethos manifesto thing that she wrote, really, spelling out the values, what are the core values and why, like what is the root of that service. I highly recommend that, whether you're a professional practitioner or whether this is something that you're doing for yourself personally. I've done that exercise a handful of times over the last few years. I return to it regularly, usually at least once a year, a couple times a year. And I do highly recommend that as a way to sort of synthesize out why, for what purpose are we doing what we're doing professionally, personally, spiritually. I would also add, again, this point of like, how do we know if we're in alignment with that life of shamanic service? Again, attuning to where is the energy asking to go? And are you allowing it to flow where it's asking to go? And I know that I feel like probably anyone who is employed or self-employed has had this experience, or also even if you're not self-employed, but you know what it's like to try to force yourself to do something that is like, for example, it's easy for me to look at the writing thing or like a newsletter thing. And I have a lot of inspiration for writing. So when I do, it's easy. It's like, oh, here's an article. Here's this amazing thing that I just get to spit out and write. And it's got all sorts of awesome content and tools. But when I'm not in that mode, if I try to force myself to sit down, like I should write a newsletter, it's torture. It's awful. It's like pulling my thumbnails out with my teeth. It's just this really unaligned experience. And then, when I do catch myself in that mode, then I step away and I ask, okay, where is the energy flowing? Okay, the energy's flowing to to go dance or to make a video or to call this friend or to check in with this client. Okay, the energy is flowing in all of these other areas. So I get to serve in these other areas instead. And so that's another invitation checkpoint for you, is tuning in. Where is the aliveness? How do we follow the aliveness? Because ultimately that is the highest service that we can offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And it's going to change all the time. And that's something that I find when I'm working with my clients, is that there's a lot of idea that something should look like a certain way, or that I should want to do it this way, or, you know, everyone says that I should do this or that, or, but this doesn't fit. It doesn't work for my life. It doesn't work for the way that my brain works, right? Like, oh, I really want to, I had a client recently and has been talking about this book and these writings and stuff, and finally got under like, oh, I grew up very dyslexic and I have a lot of judgment, and I don't, you know, it's like the structures, I have all of these great ideas, but the structures don't fit. And it's like, okay, well, let's figure it out. Like, okay, so like, you know, let's do these transcriptions and get those, and then just send, you know, have an editor, and have the editor is going to be supporting you as you're going through this, instead of feeling like you have to do it all alone. But it's not going to necessarily look the way that you think it should. And if you're following all of these business people online and they're not, there are some, I see some business people who sort of like, they're a business marketing person and then they have a spiritual awakening and then they have this very successful business and business coaching, and they sort of have some concept of it, but generally there's still a lot of like, okay, well, it should look like this, and here's your formula that you're going to follow. And I tell you, every time I've tried to follow some fucking formula, I just wasted so many hours of my life, and most of the time produce something that I'm like, I can't even deal with this. Like, I throw it away. So it has to follow the energy. It has to follow the inspiration. And yeah, there are techniques and tools and all of these things that we can build in structures around what you're doing so that it's successful. But the underlying inspiration and energy has to be there, or you will just be kind of spinning your wheels trying to do what somebody else is doing and not, you know, not getting where you're supposed to go, which is unique. It's your own thing. It's how you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. And to add on to this, you know, I've been in a similar position as Kat, where, you know, there's the traditional wisdom that we see in business coaching and in entrepreneurial field that, you know, no matter, I find this is the case with a lot of spiritual business coaches, you know, quite honestly. There are, of course, exceptions. There are, of course, people who are, and we know people like this who are, you know, blazing a path and leading the revolution, so to speak, in terms of building this new paradigm of business. But even a lot of the people who say they're doing that are still spitting out the same old stuff. And, you know, quite unfortunately, I think it's, again, this, how do we practice that discernment of where is the aliveness flowing? How do we practice the awareness of, okay, what is being asked of us, not only in the 3D level of service, right, which is coming with all of the dogma and coming with all of the, you know, the rules and the program structure and the marketing structure and blah, 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 whatever else. But how is this business, you know, and our business exists within the 3D level of service, the body level of service. How is our business also fulfilling our service to self-growth and our service to spirit? Also fulfilling our, you know, our personal actualization and our service that comes through living our unique life path and pursuit of self-actualization, and also our service to the collective experience of all of humanity and all of life on earth for the benefit of all beings. So if your business is not also speaking to these level of services, you know, this level of service, then that is not truly shamanic service. It's just a business. And ultimately, that's where a lot of business wisdom, entrepreneurial wisdom, even if it comes under the guise of, you know, oh, I had a spiritual awakening and I listened to singing bowls, right? A lot of that still lives in the old paradigm of authority and leadership. So I invite you to question, and I had this conversation, you know, with one of my clients a couple of weeks ago, where we were looking at, well, what are the old structures? What are the old rules around authority? What is the old model of service? And I don't know if you know this, but the definition of a corporation, right? And much of the US, and many companies are founded as corporations, but corporations are legally required to maximize their profits. Otherwise, they can be sued by their shareholders. And so the highest goal of a corporation always, always, always is to maximize profits, whatever that means, whatever that takes. Otherwise, they're at risk of being sued for not maximizing profits. And so a lot of business wisdom and a lot of entrepreneurial wisdom, whether people know it or not, even if you do have an LLC or even if you do have a different type of business model, is informed by that business structure that is designed to maximize profits. And that might not be one of your priorities. That's not one of my priorities, not one of my ethos. Like if I had shareholders, I own 100% of my company, my business. If I had shareholders, they would have sued me 1,000 times already because of, right? Because I take on scholarship clients, because I pay for, really premium services from people that I value and respect, because I want to support them, because I invest in trainings, because I allocate my money and my energy in ways that I am guided to by spirit, to maximize aliveness as the metric of success in my business, to maximize life force, to maximize that flow, not to maximize profit. So please keep that in mind in terms of, we're looking at, again, service through that 3D business lens. Where is the advice that you're taking coming from? Is it, even under the guise of this new paradigm, white light? Is it actually the old paradigm bullshit that is going to make you do stuff that you don't actually like, that's not in alignment with your service? And ultimately, anyone who is living this path of shamanic service, anyone who is aligned with this, our highest service is to spirit. Our highest service is to our own soul calling. Our highest service is to the life that wants to flow through us. And there's no getting around that. If that's a commitment that you have made, either explicitly or implicitly, then that's where your energy is going to go. And if you try to fight it, it's going to be really uncomfortable. So best advice is to allow that to move through you and trust that things are happening exactly as they need to, whether you understand it or not.
Well said. Good. All right, great. Anything else, Michelle? Any other tools or pieces that, I think this is amazing.
Yeah.
We have a lot of other, like Michelle said, we have over 100 other episodes. You can tune back in on things like integration, boundaries, working with clients.
I think we should just a little bit touch on the boundaries piece, because I think that's important, like boundaries around service. Can we amplify that a little bit?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, great, because I had one thing show up. So one of the, and Kat, I'm sure you can relate to this too, but one of the areas that I did end up putting up a boundary around my service, because I noticed this pattern repeating, and I was like, actually, I'm not on board with that, I'm not a fan, was around service through my romantic relationships. Meaning that I had these people coming into my life who thought they wanted to date me, but who actually needed a shaman. And there was this, the line there that I eventually figured out, and I noticed, okay, there are these people who are coming in under the context of we're dating or we're having some sort of romantic experience. And yet really what they need, and what, I'm showing up for, because I didn't recognize that this was happening, was that they need healing, they need catharsis, they need someone to help guide them through this experience. And then as soon as they receive that energy or that experience, then it's like, okay, we're done. And so I just, had a few of those before I realized what was happening. And I ended up putting up a boundary around, I am not interested in having that dynamic play out within the context of my romantic relationships anymore. That's a boundary in which I am not willing to serve in that way. If these people are requiring my service, then they can come in through the door of, being a friend or being a client. I have other ways for them to receive from me that does not involve this other emotional realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think there what that signaling is to do an assessment. And like I was talking about the magic box, right? Like relationships and community and your business and your home and all of these different
Are
aspects
those,
of your life.
is that what the magic box is? Because you didn't say what the pieces were earlier.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, all the different parts of, and it includes like, you know, your community and your tools and your gifts and all of these things. So it's like really looking and assessing your life. Like, where are you allowing maybe depletion to occur in one of these areas? And one of the things is that if you are called to this kind of service and you don't have any outlet for it, life will find an outlet for you. And it will find experiences and people and things that will push you to service in some way. So it's really helpful for you to create your own boundary-filled experiences, containers of creation, so that you can be of service and not be depleted by this work, because it's messy and wishy-washy and people are always coming to you for help, but you don't have a proper container for them, and they're always asking for more and more of your energy and your time and your attention, and you're not getting anything from the relationship, or it's just you're always being of service in that way, which isn't supporting you financially, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And it's really important to look at those things as well, and to acknowledge when maybe there's lack of balance, lack of boundaries, places where your service has become kind of amorphous, like you're not really sure where it begins or where it ends, or what you're willing to do or not willing to do. So you're doing too much. And anytime you're feeling resentful, angry, unappreciated, to look at those things, because you might be engaging in service that doesn't have a container, it doesn't have boundaries, it doesn't have something that feels good. And you might be able to do shamanic service or whatever kind of service that you're offering. And if it feels great, you feel great, everything's wonderful, awesome, go right ahead. But when things don't feel good, start looking at, okay, well, what's really going on here? What's the big problem here? Am I supporting somebody in my life above and beyond, and I don't have any boundaries? Good to look at.
Great advice. Yes. I love what you said about if we don't have an outlet for that service, it'll happen whether we like it or not, right? So best to, create a container or create some sort of stipulations of how we're in agreement or not in agreement with that service flowing through us. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. Any other tools, perspective, advice that, no? I mean, we covered a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. And like I said, there's lots of other episodes. You can go back and look at other things, and there's plenty out there.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you for joining us. And on that note, you can, once again, if you have not subscribed already, then please do so. You can subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. Please like and review our episodes, review our podcast if you like, hoping for 5 stars because you find this so amazing and so wonderful, but 4 is okay too. And if there's anyone that you feel called to share this content with, anyone who needs to hear any of these messages, then please go ahead and pass this along. We do love offering this to you. We love creating this. This is part of our joy, part of our service. Kat and I have a lot of fun, coming up with different topics and conversations to have. And if you feel inclined to support us financially, we would love to be in receiving as part of our service, if that is part of your service to offer to us. And you can support us financially through, you can make a one-time donation through PayPal. So send PayPal as a friend, please, to Shaman Sister Sessions at gmail.com. A donation of your choice for a one-time thing. Or if you'd like to become a patron of our work, you can do so at patreon.com/Shaman Sister Sessions. That's patreon.com/Shaman Sister Sessions. And you can sign up to donate at at minimum $1 a month. And that would be super helpful. Even just $1 a month does go a long way toward helping us cover the costs of creating this podcast for you. So please do consider supporting our work. And if you are inclined to work with us individually or collectively, Kat, you have your Heroes program. Can you give us another little snippet about that?
This is my new membership program. It's super exciting. It's meditation practices and Qigong practices, energy practices, also mini courses on practical and mystical topics, and developing skill set and doing your work in the world. And then there's live calls twice a month. So it's already a really great group, and I'm so excited to just keep producing content for this. I'm about to right now go and shoot some Qigong videos to put up for this next month. And yeah, so that's on my website, katherinebird.com. And it's Heroes, H-I-E-R-O-S, which means sacred or sanctified.
And when you join, you can become a superheroes.
And that's the first live call. We did an incredible meditation working with our own personal mythology and cultivating energy toward becoming our superheroes. And it was amazing. People already had like incredible experiences. So I'm really excited. I even had an incredible experience and got information on a piece of service from a guide while I was leading the meditation. So
amazing. I love that. Awesome. I missed the live call, so I'm going to circle back for the recording. I'm a member of Heroes, I have to say. I endorse this product. Also, so speaking of memberships, hey, Lightworker Portal, in case you haven't heard me talk about that yet. Lightworker Portal is the community membership that I have available to my people, starting at just $4.99 a month. That's $4.99 a month, that you can go ahead and join through my website, joyofenergy.com. There's an option on there that says join your tribe. And it's got tons of content and articles and class recordings and people from all over the world as part of this community membership. As of right now, in case you couldn't tell, I'm not really advertising taking new one-on-one clients, but I do have one or two people who have messaged me about that while I'm not putting anything out, which I'm really grateful for. And so I am still taking consultations. By the time this episode comes out, who knows, I might be ready to take new people on. So go ahead and message me whenever, and then we'll work that out. But as I said, much of my service is happening in other areas right now. I will say, though, the Alchemy of Service thing is going to be available at some point soon. And if that's something that you're interested in, that has, again, the teachings of alchemical philosophy and shamanic philosophy applied to putting your service out in the world and having this confident, empowered relationship with your service, if that's something that you're interested in, then please go ahead and get on my list. And you can do that through joyofenergy.com. Otherwise, just circle back and, we'll be in a different place by the time the next episode comes out. That's all I got. I'm doing dog things right now. Big way.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michelle.
Stay tuned for pictures of my dog, at the very least. Yeah.
More to come.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. See you next time.